So a very warm welcome to your third module out of 4 in your final year, in your top-up year of your degree. And this time we're going to be looking at strategic leadership. So just an overview of the learning outcomes. We're looking at how we create strategies, learning outcome 1. There's a number of aspects to number 1, which will be in the first session that we've got. Ethics seems to be coming in there, organisational values. So all sounds a bit like deja vu, doesn't it, from the organisational development. But there's a little bit about emergent and prescriptive strategic development. So we'll do that in our first session. Then we're going to be looking at contemporary research. So this is bringing it up to date in terms of how managers and leaders now are looking at change. And I found quite an interesting paper on that about leading through COVID. And I'd like you to do some research on that as well, which we'll do between sessions 1 and 2. Then we're going to be looking at leadership styles. So this really goes back to things that we've been looking at throughout the whole course in terms of different autocratic, democratic, different sort of whether we adapt our style or not in terms of Blake and Melton's model, situational leadership as well. But we're also looking at globalisation, internationalisation, strategy, technology and innovations, and organisational development, so the one you've just done. So we're looking at like how leaders take their organisations forward. Then we're going to be looking at how leaders are developed and sort of approach change. And we're going to do that across a variety of sectors. And that's quite interesting because assignments 1 and 2 are going to focus on the same sector. So in that one, we want you to bring in some additional knowledge. So hopefully that should be quite interesting because of all the other assignments that you've done. That should be fairly straightforward. Then on learning outcome 5, we're going to look at measures. So this are key performance indicators and how they work for the organisation. And on outcome number 6, learning outcome number 6, we're looking at ethics. And we're looking at ethics in terms of how leaders are leading organisations, how they're followed, and how that's put into place in terms of the decisions they make. So we'll be looking there as well at things like diversity and equality and how they're governed. But we'll do a bit more on ethics in terms of different ethical approaches and some more theory on that. So that's the sort of concepts and frameworks and sort of academic underpinning. In terms of our sessions, we've got 6 taught sessions. Session number 3 and session number 6, what I've done is they'll be fairly short and then we'll have one-to-ones afterwards. We've got our deadlines at the end of October and 10th of December. For now, at the time of recording this, which is actually in July, the 1-week extension still stands. So you don't actually need permission to have a 1-week extension. Please check if you're intending to use that. And also, just out of courtesy, please let me know because then I'll know to schedule some time in the week after. So if you can keep them on to time, it works better because I can get them all moderated at the same time and release everyone's results. But I do appreciate that circumstances sometimes won't allow that to happen. Now we should also have been moving over to Aula, and I've actually already set the course up on Aula. So of course it's really important that you can actually access Aula. So I'm looking at building something in our face-to-face session in terms of an introduction to Aula to make sure you can access it. So that's quite important because another reason that's important, I've set up the Teams sessions for all 6 sessions, just one link, but I haven't emailed them to you because what I'd like you to do is go onto Aula and click on the link for Teams there. So each week you go through week 1, week 2, etc. into the right link and join the live parts of the sessions. Please check each session because there's some live activities, there's some self-directed activities, and so actually the timings can change a little bit. So it never tends to be very much, but sometimes the session might start at 9:15, other times it might just be 9 o'clock. So I've gone through learning outcomes already. So first session we're going to be looking at strategic management, leadership, ethics and organisational values. What we're really looking at is how ethics are, how strategy is created. Now, I wanted to really introduce you in this video to your assessments, and I'm going to be absolutely honest because this is, so it's the second, I'm teaching it at the moment, but I've also taught it to part-time students last year. So I'm familiar with the assessments, and I think assessment number one is over-assessed. And what I mean by that, you're going to be creating some contents in terms of analysing this time a fashion retailer. So you've got a number of retailers that you could choose from. You've got them very specific there. If there was another fashion retailer that you fancied looking at, that's absolutely fine, but just let me know so I can check that it's in the right category. And what we're asking you to do, we'll come on to in the next slide. But the reason I say it's over-assessed is there's two outputs for this. So we've got a report, it's only 1,000 words, which really isn't very long, and you've got a 10% contingency, so 1,100, still not very long. So you really need to be looking at adding some images into that in terms of sort of smart art and diagrams to try and make the most of the word count. But you've also got a 10-minute video. So you've got on exactly the same topic. So you're going to be recording your thoughts, doing a PowerPoint presentation, and then writing a report on it as well. So that's why I feel for 40% of the total marks, that's quite a lot of work. Even though the report's only short, there's still a lot of outputs really for that. And then the final 60% is at a report, so the normal sort of thing that you're used to doing. What I'm going to ask you to do in one of the self-directed activities today, I think it's the next one before we actually meet in person, is to look up some sort of facts or figures or something, some industry insights into the retail industry. So really interested in what's going on now, so we can bring that in and we can look at what changes are happening. You're going to need to pick two different organisations in the retail industry, fashion retail industry, for assignments 1 and 2. So you can't do the same ones, absolutely cannot. So you might find something particularly interesting that's happened in fashion retail and an organisation that you're really interested in, and it might be worth doing that on the bigger assignment. And then on the smaller assignment, this first one is to look at another organisation. So in terms of how you record yourself, obviously we've got a number of options. I would suggest what I'm using now is pretty good, and it's called Screencast-O-Matic. So if you're, because what you can do is you can set it up so you record yourself, and I do expect to see you on this video, and then you can record your slides as well, so both can be recorded at once, and it's really quite straightforward and nice to use. I've set up on Aula a link that should mean that you can upload the video no problems. If you can't, then please send me a link and put it somewhere. But I would like you to try and do that, because then we've got everything in one place. And I've set it up specifically on something called Handin, which is meant to handle videos and has done for previous assignments that I've marked. So the first assessment then, so we're picking one of those organisations and you're looking at a strategic change that's happened. So it might be they've launched a new initiative, it might be a new product range, product line, it could be a well-being, it could be but it's got to be something, I think, really that's happened in, say, the last 3 years. So it's fairly recent that they've launched. And what I'd like you to do is you to look at different approaches they could have used to introduce that change, and looked at how they introduced them and how they led to that introduction and what they could have done differently. Obviously, you might not have access to all this information as to what they've done, so we need to look at what was publicly available, any criticisms actually, so there might be some industry press that talks about what they've done and gives different insights, and ideally some critical analysis in terms of what they could have done differently. Then the second one, we're looking at contemporary research on how you manage change and overcome resistance to change. So we're trying to build the existing research, bring it up to date. There's something actually that's called the COVID change cycle that might be useful here to look at. So it's building on the Kubler-Ross change curve and grief cycle. So that could be interesting. But really it's what you find is relevant. And then we're looking at actually the relationship in ethics in terms of how people lead and how people follow, and actually, the impact that's had on the delivery of that change in terms of what decisions they've made, how they've been governed, how they've put these new policies into place. So You want an organisation with something really good to talk about. So something that's happened in the last 3 years and there's been some type of change, some new initiative, something. It may have been something that they decided to do. So it could be a proactive, or it could have emerged to be an emergent type of change from something that's happened to them. So that's what we're doing for assessment 1. For assessment 2, so this is worth 60%. So it's a different organisation this time in the same industry, fashion retail. So it might be one of the ones listed, but it could be a different fashion retailer. So this time we're talking about, I haven't got the word count there, have I? It's, let me just check how many words it is. I'm pretty sure it's 4,000 words. So obviously that's a much more significant or substantial piece of work. But just double check that it's 4,000 words, but I'm quite confident it is. So this time you're a management consultant, and I've given some samples of these assignments, both the first and the second, under assessments on Aula, all of which got over 70%. In fact, with the second lot, they actually got over 75%. So we've got 2 77s and 1 83. If you look at the 83, it's absolutely brilliant, and he actually created it and made his own consultancy name. It's just wonderful. So he did it as if it was a piece of work that was recommended to the organisation. So the things that you're looking at there, you're picking this fashion retailer, you're looking at trends and things that are happening in terms of leadership and delivering change. You're going to look at leadership styles in the fashion sector. And again, we've got this globalization, internationalization. See how all they're going to fit into some nice subheadings for you. You're going to look at strategy and technology innovation and organizational development, which of course you're all experts on. And I would expect to see those as subheaders. So this one's really important. What you need to do here is consider how leadership change has been implemented across a range of sectors. So this just isn't just fashion retail. So here we're looking at how else have organisations across different sectors delivered change, in particular business leaders. So I'm thinking here that you may actually choose an organisation that you've been critiquing in your case study. For the last assignments, you might look at something like the electronic sector this time. If you're Krishna, if you're Rob, you might look at a Tesla, Apple for Tom, perhaps. So you could look at how they led change, because you've got an intimate insight now through the work you've just done. And then finally, what you're looking at, and you don't have to do this in order, you can change the order of them if it makes more sense, key performance indicators. And key performance indicators are ways of measuring the success of that business when it's looking at leading that change. So how they're used to lead change at a strategic level, and obviously check whether it's happened or not. So we've got some core text there for you. Anything that doesn't have a normal sort of text written on it is going to be one of those. And there's also in the reading lists on Aula, there's a reading list that's called a Talis list, and it goes through to directly link to online text that you could use as well. So what I'm going to do is leave the rest of this content for our live online session. So I'd like you to have a good look through the assessment brief. I want you to have a look, really focus on assessment 1 this time, because we'll go session 4, we'll look at assessment 2. So I want you to look at assessment 1. I want you to look at the samples and see the reports and the videos. And again, there's some really good videos on there as well. I think it might just be 2 of each, but they're of a really high standard. Maybe more reports, but certainly just 2 videos. And I want you to feel also to do some research on what's happening on fashion retail, and have a really good quality source and a good sort of piece that you can share with your colleagues, because the more good references we've got, the better, so that when we're live online on Teams, we can share all these links with each other, and then I can put them on Aula afterwards as well. So really looking forward to teaching you this module. Feels like halfway through the final year now, but it does feel like we're sort of really getting quite close to the end, which is very exciting. Okay, see you soon.